Erin, hello.
Hello, Beth. Good to see
I have
you.
something super exciting to tell you.
Tell me.
So you know how the name of the show is Ask Erin, Dear Beth, and our original idea was we were going to actually do a fake like question thing where people were like asking us questions and Um, well, we put up when we started making the show a like ask us a question, and somebody finally asked us a question. Like we have a question that's
We have a
from a
listener
person.
question.
Yeah.
Ah, like Muppets
So we now
Wow.
have a real advice column, not just a fake advice
I love
column.
it. Oh my gosh, so
Um,
exciting.
yeah, I know. So I would love to tell you about the question that Susan has asked us.
Wonderful. I can't wait.
Yeah. And so Susan wrote us in the form, which the form is always linked in the show notes and on our website, but you can feel free to ask us your own questions. Susan wrote us and said, my images come from a Foxp1 IF on mouse embryo brain tissue comparing GFP Foxp1 signal in wild type and mutant sectioned samples. I'm using a Keyence wide field microscope to capture images. They're Z-stacked and stitched at high resolution. We're segmenting and counting the DAPI stained nuclei using a CellProfiler pipeline, and from there measuring the intensity of the GFP signal to determine FOXP1 positive nuclei. The issue is that there is unequal signal and illumination in the DAPI images, with the boundaries brighter and the center dimmer. I'm attaching both the DAPI image and the corresponding GFP image. First of all, Susan, you are great at writing questions. Like, this is great. So often when we talk to people on the image.sc forum, if you look, we have a previous episode encouraging people to give us more information because oftentimes people are just like, it's broke, it's not working, because they don't know what to ask. But this is a great example of a question. I'm so excited. This is our first question.
This is a beautiful question.
Um,
5-star
so,
question.
yeah. Thank you, Susan. You rock. Uh, so, I have taken the liberty of loading up Susan's images into CellProfiler, into the workspace viewer. And so here is her, which is being a little bit slow and cranky because these images are a touch big. And CellProfiler was born in a 256 by 256 world. Like CellProfiler is a little cranky on stitched images, but thankfully this isn't too big.
Yeah.
And so you can definitely, even though everything is white because that's the default, though not in CellProfiler 5, you can definitely get a sense of just brightness, like, okay, like here things are much brighter and here things are much dimmer, which is exactly what Susan described. Um, and so you could imagine like differences in intensity coming from different sources. This doesn't look like this is something where it's like unequal illumination. If it were, I would, send Susan or anybody to our episode about illumination correction. This doesn't look like that. This looks like these nuclei are maybe just smaller or brighter or whatever. And so these are truly brighter and these are truly dimmer, but we actually want to treat them both the same. Uh, So in zooming in, I have sort of a couple thoughts in general. The first is just, these are stitched, and actually when they originally sent to us, they're sent to us as JPEGs. So like, if I were going to be segmenting these and trying to count them in general, I would probably just use CellPose rather than like, I mean, CellPose inside CellProfiler is totally a thing you can do, but rather than trying to do CellProfiler segmentation, just because when stuff gets this crowded, CellProfiler segmentation is often going to be not ideal. The other thing you could think about if you didn't want to do deep learning segmentation for whatever reason, maybe you're not comfortable, maybe just your computer's really slow, is you could do something like a proxy metric, where we often tell people like, okay, if you can't measure the exact thing you want, what's a close thing that you could measure that's easier to measure? So like you could measure the percent of the image that's the DAPI positive and GFP positive. And since each nucleus is about the same size, if what you care about is like percent positive, the percent area positive should be very correlated with the percent number positive.
Mhm.
And so actually segmenting individual nuclei assuming that the individual nuclei are about the same size, which they seem to me at a first glance to be sort of 15-ish, 20-ish pixels across in both areas, I think would probably actually kind of work. But that's ultimately up to Susan and her biological question, which she can figure out later. I want to jump and just sort of actually answer the specific thing she's having a problem with, which is, well, some of these are brighter, some of these are dimmer. What do I do about it? So here I'm showing you the threshold module. I'm not sure you identify primary objects just because I really want to sort of emphasize like where the issue is coming from. But identify primary objects uses all of the same settings as the threshold module. In fact, it literally just brings the threshold module in sneakily under the hood. So you'll get the same effect here. So this is what describes in her question. If I just threshold this, she didn't specify exactly which thresholding method she uses, but I suspect it's going to be the same no matter what. Here is what you get. And if I zoom in here, let's zoom in a little bit more, like everything is being picked up, even things that like are really definitely like not nuclei, they're between nuclei. But that's going to make it really hard to segment because CellProfiler like thinks it should be counting these areas and it shouldn't. That's wrong. Um, and that's what you get in the bright areas, and then in the dim areas, you end up with the opposite problem, which is there's totally real stuff there, but CellProfiler isn't finding it because it's just a little bit dimmer. So like this nucleus here, or piece of a nucleus or whatever, is just totally missing. Um, Thankfully, there's a actually really simple solution for this. This is actually going to kick off. We're going to talk a few of the next several episodes about the thresholding settings in CellProfiler and why they're actually really important to understand all of them, even though there's a bunch of them, because you can actually solve a lot of problems just with changes in how you do thresholding. And the key setting here for Susan is this threshold strategy. Here, the default in CellProfiler is global. But there's actually two options here. There's global and there's adaptive. And if you're ever not sure what a particular setting is doing in CellProfiler, reminder that the most important button in CellProfiler are these little help buttons, which are next to every single setting. Every single setting has biologist-written help text. And it actually tells you what these two different modes are, and when you should use them. And so the global calculates a single threshold value based on the whole image, and that's much faster, which is why it's our default. But if you need a different threshold in different regions, you can go to this adaptive mode, and then you can say in different regions, pick a different threshold, and then you can get different thresholds across different parts of the image. So I went ahead and I set up an adaptive threshold here. And I picked, so the major sort of configurable thing here is the size of the window. So I picked a sort of 200 by 200 window of the image. So in theory, each sort of 200 by 200 block gets thresholded independently. And then CellProfiler does some like magic stuff under the hood that I won't go into in terms of making sure that it's not like you have a threshold of like 0.5 here and 0.001 over here. It tries to actually make all of the thresholds kind of coherent so that it's not you get if your window's too small, you get crazy things to happen. But you can actually see here what the threshold values are that it's picking. And I love that this is actually part of the module display. And so what you can immediately visually get the sense of is you have higher threshold values that have to be passed up here where the things are bright, and the lowest threshold values down here where the things are dim. So down here, it's picking a threshold of something like 0.02, and up here, a threshold of something like 0.04. And so if I zoom in,
Yeah, I love that because you can see the pattern of the threshold values
mhm,
matching the pattern of the brightness.
yeah,
And so immediately you can have this intuition of like, oh yeah, that
mhm,
that worked, or like that certainly is going to work better than
mhm,
my global thresholding. You can see like, and
mhm,
if that pops up and your patterns are not matching, you're like, oh, I need to, before I even dive in, I know I need to adjust my thresholding window,
yeah,
or some other settings because
mhm,
they should be similar.
yeah. And so this I just zoomed in on a super dim area. This area looks like it's actually fully capturing everything now. Um, and if I zoom in on a really bright area, it's still picking up a lot. It's picking up a lot more than I would really prefer. But there is a lot of out of focus light that's going on here. So like it is at least like that this big region where there aren't nuclei, it is now like catching that there isn't, and some of the other breaks between them. There are definitely more things, and we're going to talk in further episodes about how you can tweak the thresholding algorithm even more to try and get even more like more strict or less strict or things like that. But I think to answer Susan's overall original question, this is a super common thing. The solution to it is adaptive thresholding. And in the Identify Primary Objects module, um, if you go ahead and you turn advanced settings on, when you go to do the thresholding and identify primary objects, you have the same global or adaptive. And so assuming you don't decide to just go do something like cell pose, which you possibly should, switching your identify primary objects from global to adaptive will get you what you want to get.
Love it. So simple, like one
Mhm.
button change.
Mhm. But
And
you have to know which of the thousand buttons, which is why I'm
yes,
so glad that Susan wrote in because we could
yay.
tell her.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm. Anything else you'd add?
No, I think this is a great start. I mean, and as you said, exactly, like I love that it's just one button in Cell Profiler, but Cell Profiler has so many buttons. And
It
so
has literally almost 1,000 buttons.
yeah, yeah. So
So,
that is a fun thing for us to get to do. Work our way
mhm.
through those buttons and help explain. You know,
Episode 1027. We now reach the episode where we talk about this button.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
we won't do that.
yeah.
But
No, no. But I do, I do think I do think that is one of those things that like as sort of advanced image analysts,
Mhm,
um, that we have, the benefit of anybody like working with, or training as an actual image analyst, is that, we have this immediate intuition, that we immediately know what is that one button you should change.
mhm.
And so, yeah, just put a plot, ask Erin, dear Beth. Oh my gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
these are questions. But we also have,
Mhm,
as you mentioned, an episode about asking questions for the forum. So that's another great place to, like get help from expert image analysts, um,
mhm,
who can, again,
mhm,
we don't, and I think another cool thing we've sort of touched on at other points is like, we don't need to know your biology. I
mhm,
don't need to know the names of your genes or your labels.
mhm,
Or in this case, you don't, because I mean, we had them, but that didn't actually come into play. So as an
mhm,
image analyst, you can have lots of expertise totally independent of that is
mhm,
applicable sort of regardless of what the underlying biology is, applicable to so many different underlying biologies, um,
mhm.
because it's a similar image task.
Yeah. And so it's not always clear if you don't know these things like how certain image tasks relate to one another, which is why we have office hours. There's the forum. There's the Ask Erin Dear Beth Q&A form, which people have actually filled out now. So totally ask us things. This is an advice column for real now.
Yay!
So you can ask us things.
Awesome. Well, Beth, thank you for kicking off our real advice
Yeah.
column.
All right, and we'll be back in future episodes to talk more about the threshold module because it's a cool module.
Can't wait. Bye.